everybody, my name is Pauper Player, and today we're going to be unboxing Rakdos Madness, a black-red aggro burn deck that basically uses the mechanic Madness, which is when a card gets discarded, you can play it for reduced mana cost to kind of just beat down your opponent. So we're going to go ahead and get this open up. As with every video, we're going to be sleeving this deck using Dragon Shield sleeves. Right now I have the Crimson Matte sleeves, and we're going to be holding our deck in our Ultimate Guard Boulder. Everybody's favorite moment of the video, dumping the packing peanuts and everything in the box. And would you look at that? Card Kingdom sent me like one big fat package this time, not like two smaller containers. It's all just one thing. All right, let's go ahead and get this all cleaned up. Some of you might be asking, Joel, what happens with all the packing peanuts that you pour out in your videos? Well, kind of tastes like kettle corn. All right, let's go ahead and get this bad baby open. Man, they really tucked this all in there, huh? Here's your 75 card deck. All right, always appreciate the beautiful art on the tokens from Card Kingdom. We're gonna be going ahead and starting off with a sideboard card here named Psychotic Haze. For 2 black mana and 2 colorless, Psychotic Haze deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. But if you were to discard this card, it would only cost 2 mana. So basically for 2 mana, this basically just does damage to everything. So as per usual, we're gonna go ahead and push it to the left since these are sideboard cards. We are running 3 copies of those. And oh man, let's just appreciate that old school Magic card look to it. I love this art. Going on to main board, we have Fiery Temper, 3 red mana. Fiery Temper deals 3 damage to target creature or player. For Madness, it can cost 1 red. So basically, this is essentially just a lightning bolt that you have to discard in order for it to be a lightning bolt. Very few times will you ever be like hard casting Fiery Temper. I used to play a Madness deck in Modern. I love Madness. It's one of my favorite mechanics. Fiery Temper is going to be 4 in main board. Nihil Spellbomb, we've gone over this card in our mono black Devotion deck. We're going to be running 2 of these. 1 mana, sacrifice Nihil Spellbomb, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. 1 Nihil Spellbomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. You may pay black if you do draw a card. This is basically just a cheaper version of Relic of Progenitus that only black decks can run. This deck is partially black, so that is why we can run it. A Galvanic Blast. So a part of being a burn deck that discards cards and whatnot, we also have quite a few artifacts in this deck. Galvanic Blast deals 2 damage to target creature or player and has Metalcraft. Galvanic Blast deals 4 damage to that creature or player instead if you control 3 or more artifacts. So this is like a better version of Bolt if you have artifacts on the field, because it does 4 damage instead of 3. Alrighty, and now we're gonna go into Smash to Smithereens, which is 2 mana, destroy target artifact. Smash to Smithereens deals 3 damage to artifacts controller. So kind of like a 2-for-1. This card is pretty hard to replace. It's a burn spell, it's artifact removal. It's pretty common in like 90% of red decks, not just in Pauper. Smash to Smithereens has always been a really good card, like no matter where you go. All right, so next we have Soul Reap, which is a black mana and a colorless. Destroy target non-green creature. Its controller loses 3 life if you play another black spell this turn. So this card's pretty good. You know, losing the 3 life is just, you know, more burn. That's mainly what this deck does. So having normal removal in this deck is fine, but what you're primarily looking to do is to just drain your opponent as quickly as possible. So that's what this card's for. If you're able to play another cheap black spell, then not only can you destroy your opponent's creature, but then you can also go ahead and deal 3 more damage to them. So those are 3 in sideboard. We have our swamps here, which I am going to go ahead, our swamps and mountains. I am going to go ahead and get these sleeved up. I love this swamp art and I love this mountain art. I really just feel like a lot of basic lands don't get the appreciation that they deserve because Wizards does so much to like make like fancy lands, right? Like the new Dominaria lands, like the stained glass lands, like those are beautiful and everything, but like I don't know, dude. I love basic lands. Anyway, so we are running 4 basic mountains, and we're running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 swamps. The reason why for so many basic mountains is we're gonna go and skip ahead here. We have 4 great furnaces, which is going to be the red artifact land. And then we are also running 4 Drosfork bridges, which is an artifact land that is indestructible, enters the battlefield tap, but taps for red and black mana. The reason why I'm not running Vault of Whispers in this deck is because we have plenty of other artifact cards in this deck. So our Galvanic Blast will be active plenty. We will not be struggling to get that card going. And you know, there's just a lot of artifact hate in the meta right now. And the last thing you want is to have a mana base that gets hit by that artifact hate like really easily, because you definitely don't want your lands to be blowing up against a non-land destruction deck. So anyways, so we have 4 Lightning Bolt here, the man, the myth, the legend himself. We are not playing the alpha version. True, okay. In the last video for Mono Green Stompy, I was talking about how I like older versions of cards, even though I was using a newer version of Rancor. Bolts are another one that I don't want to spend $1,000 on, to buy alpha bolts. All right, so we have 4 Alma the Vein, black and 2 colorless sorcery. Target opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. And this is for a Madness of Black. The cool thing about this card is if for some reason your opponent is to ever make you discard a card, you can then cast this anyways. It's their fault that they're making you discard a card when you're playing a Madness deck.
Give me everything. Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance!
But not for me.
So if your opponent makes you discard and it's their turn, even though this is a sorcery, you can still cast this for its madness cost. So that's a cool thing. And again, this is just a drain card, right? This deck actually does good against burn because of this. There's a couple cards in this deck that are like your opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Another interesting thing about Alma the Vein and other cards that make your opponent lose life is cards that prevent damage don't prevent this. Losing life is not preventing damage in Magic. Damage is, you know, cards will say they're doing damage to you. This is you sapping away their life total. So that's what this card does. We also have Bone Shards. Bone Shards is gonna be 2 copies in sideboard. It's gonna be 1 black mana. As additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature or discard a card, destroy target creature or planeswalker. There's argument to play this in main board. It's just an extremely good removal spell, especially for a deck like this where you want to discard cards anyways. So you get 2 benefits out of it. But look at that art, man. That art is crazy. This is like the most like I'm a black magic card kind of art you can think of. Kitchen Imp, one of my favorite cards in this deck. Wow, a 2/2 for 4 mana? That kind of sucks. Joke's on you. This baby's got madness for 1, flying and haste. So yes, technically speaking, this is a 2 mana for 2/2 because you need 1 mana in order to play a card like Faithless Looting, and then you need 1 black mana in order to cast this during the discard phase. But a 2/2 with flying for haste for 2 mana is very good. This card will easily get, you know, maybe 4 to 6 damage off on your opponent before it ends up dying. And you have plenty of them. Maybe you decide to Faithless Looting on turn 3, and then you decide to drop both of these boys at the same time. And now you're swinging in for 4. And, you know, that is a pretty good clock since you're running a burn deck. So here's an interesting artifact card. Not very many Rakdos Madness decks play this, but they should. Fodder Tosser is 3 mana. If you tap it, you discard a card, and Fodder Tosser deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker. So this card is actually kind of insane. Let's go ahead back and grab Fiery Temper, right? The reason why this card is insane, you play this on turn 3, and on turn 4 and for the rest of the game, you get to tap this at instant speed at any point, and you can play any of your cards now at instant speed if you're casting for their madness cost. Fiery Temper, for example, if you're discarding this, it becomes now 5 damage, and you can alter that damage because it's not together, right? This 3 damage can go to a creature or player. This 2 damage can go to a player or planeswalker. Now, there's no planeswalkers in Pauper, but you do 2 damage to the face, and then you could do either 3 more damage to the face, or you could do 3 damage to a creature that might be giving you a hard time. I'm currently running 2 in main board because I think they're just a really, really good card to get your engine going. It's what brings the pain to the deck. deck. So next here is not a madness card. We have Tolarian Epicure. When a Tolarian Epicure enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and you create a blood token. So this card's really good for a couple of reasons. Right, you play this on turn 1, you deal 1 damage to your opponent, you create the blood token. That's already huge amounts of value. You now have a discard outlet for your madness cards. You'll be able to draw a card on the next turn. And then additionally, this card's not a heavy target for your opponent. Your opponent's probably going to be using a lot of their removal spells for your kitchen imps and, you know, our few copies of Gurmag Angler, which we haven't presented yet. So this card does do like incremental damage. Your opponent's not as worried about it, so you might get a couple of attack swings with this. If you play a couple of them, you've now dealt 4 damage to your opponent and you have a pretty wide board to start swinging in, which gets kind of hard to deal with. This card is like super underrated in this deck. Next up, we have Vampire's Kiss. This card is a black mana and a colorless. Target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. You create 2 blood tokens. So you drain for 2, damage that can't be prevented, and create 2 blood tokens, which creates more discard outlets. We are running 4 of these. And let me tell you, this deck being able to gain you life is really, really good, because the problem that burn decks will have against other burn decks is that it's basically just a battle of who draws better. But this deck specifically has sustain against burn decks. So you might run into a burn deck against this and they can't win because you're just gaining life while they're losing life. They're basically wasting their bolts. All right, everybody hates to see it. Blood Fountain has become a pretty good card in Pauper. This card is being seen in a lot of black decks right now. 1 black mana. When it enters the battlefield, you create a blood token. For 4 black mana, you tap it, sacrifice it, return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So if your opponent actually does kill your kitchen imps, this card's really good because you get to return 2 kitchen imps to your hand. You then get to sack that blood token, play the kitchen imp because you're discarding a card, and you get to draw a card. This card is insane in this deck. Like I said, this deck is running plenty of artifacts for your Galvanic Blast. You don't need to be playing all of the artifact lands, which will make your lands, you know, targets for artifact hate. Here's Gurmag Angler. A lot of spells are going to your graveyard because you are playing burn. So we have Gurmag Angler here, which has Delve. Each card you exile from your graveyard while casting the spell pays for 1. So technically speaking, there will be a point in this game where Gurmag Angler will only cost a single mana. It is a 5/5 beater, extremely popular. If you're watching this and you're familiar with Pauper, I really shouldn't have to explain this card for you. This card's played in basically every format ever. And we're running 2 of those. There is an argument that maybe playing 1 is fine. Maybe you don't need to play 2. In fact, this is one of those situations where maybe the extra bone shards can come into play, but it's nor here nor there. I ordered 2, so for the time being, I have 2 in the deck, but no shame in playing just 1. Next up, we have Duress, a card that we saw in Mono Black Control, just very good for control decks. Target opponent reveals his or her hand, you choose a non-creature, non-land card from it, that player discards that card. Unfortunately, you can't target yourself with Duress for your madness cards, but that's totally fine. We're running 3 of these in sideboards. You basically just want to use this so that if your opponent you know, has artifact hate in their deck and you need to be able to cast a few spells in order to get your madness cards out, this card can get rid of those counters. Tyrant's Choice, one of the more interesting cards for Magic, but probably one of the funniest cards in Pauper. This card is hilarious. It's not even all that super great, but in this deck it's fantastic. Tyrant's Choice is a black and a colorless. Will of the Council. Starting with you, each player votes for death or torture. If death gets more votes, each opponent sacrifices a creature. If torture gets more votes or the vote is tied, each opponent loses 4 life. So the hilarious thing about this card is that your opponent will lose 4 life 100% of the time. So if you decide to target your opponent's win condition, a very important creature, they're not going to want to sacrifice it, so they're going to lose 4 life because you guys tied. They're going to choose torture. And if you decide to choose torture, then your opponent is just going to lose 4 life. Because if your opponent votes to sacrifice a creature, then you're tied and they lose 4 life. And if they vote for torture, then they just still lose 4 life. I don't want to tell you, this card just does 4 damage to your opponent in like the most passive aggressive way possible. And it's, I don't know, it's just fucking hilarious to me. And finally, no introduction is needed for what is probably the most popular non-burn red card in Magic the Gathering, Faithless Looting. Draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards with flashback 3. This is the main engine to the deck. This is what you play. I mean, you can play it on turn 1, but you can't cast your Madness cards without having open mana available. So you're pretty much playing Faithless Manning on turn 2 in this deck. Faithless Looting is currently banned in Modern. This card is a menace in pretty much all decks that care about discarding across all of Magic, and it is in common. So it is in this deck. So let's go ahead and get this all boxed up. This is definitely... What the f is going on here? This is definitely one of my favorite decks that we've opened so far. I love this deck. I'm like kind of whatever about burn, but this adds enough twists to burn that like I really enjoy it. Like this deck has like interesting mechanics and different types of win cons to it, and that's why I love it so much. So we're gonna go ahead and put this away. Like I said, the list can also change a little bit, right? Like I'm playing a couple copies of Gurmag Angler, which you don't have to, but the deck list will be listed below this exact one, so you can go ahead and check it out. Next week, we are gonna be unboxing 4 color Slither Tribal in Pauper. So if you want to check that out, you can look at the playlist down below, and you'll also see the other deck techs that we've done. And if you want to see more content in the future, make sure to press subscribe button. Let me know what deck you want to see in the future. Go ahead and just type it down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.